At this point of the course, you already have a good idea of what ECAs are, what products and services they offer, how to apply for an ECA loan, different products that different ECAs in the world provide, and some of their policies. But how much financing can an ECA provide based on the amount of exports that go out of the ECA country? And there's a set of rules for that are very specific to each ECA, and they are called the content eligibility rules. Content eligibility rules vary widely from ECA to ECA. Some ECAs are actually quite generous and flexible in terms of content eligibility and allow a great amount of financing in relation to the amount of exports from that country. Those countries can be Italy, for example, and Canada and Finland. Some other countries, however, can be very strict as to the amount of financing that is tied to the amount of exports. And countries like that are the US and South Africa, for example. So what we're going to do in this section is we're going to look at 3 different types of countries. There are countries that are very strict, there are countries that are very flexible and generous, and then there are countries in the middle. And most ECAs are in that middle tier of flexible content requirements. What we're going to do over the next few slides is we're going to take you through the process of calculating the eligibility, that is, calculating the amount financeable by a flexible ECA based on the amount of exports from that country. And we're going to use an example using Korea Exim Bank. So the first step that you need to take is you need to look at the Korean supply contract. In any financing that is guaranteed or provided by Korea Exim Bank, there has to be one Korean contractor in charge of pretty much all the procurement. So that contract is called the Korean supply contract. So the first step that we need to do in order to identify and calculate how much financing can Korea Exim Bank provide is to actually identify within the Korean supply contract what is Korean content, what is local country content, and what is foreign content. Now, remember that local country content are the goods and services that are provided or made in the country where the goods eventually are exported to. So again, we need to quantify the amount of Korean content, local content, and anything that is not Korean or local will be foreign. For ECAs of countries that are in this flexible category, national content is the value of goods and services for which a certificate of origin from that country can be obtained. And generally what that means is that if the last step of the assembly process of a piece of equipment is executed in the ECA country, even if the components or many components of that piece of equipment are made overseas, the full value of the piece of equipment is considered Korean content because the last step in the assembly process was made in Korea, and therefore Chamber of Commerce in Korea can provide a certificate of origin for it. This is a very key consideration for ECAs of this type, and it's very different, as you can see, from the strict ECA rules that we talked about for a different category of ECAs. The next step in this process is to understand for this specific ECA that you're working with and for the particular loan agreement that you have is how much foreign content will the ECA finance in relation to the home country content. In the case of Korea Exim Bank, it can vary. It depends on the project, it depends on the country, the local country, and on other factors. So for our example, we're going to assume that for every $1 of Korean content, Korea Exim Bank is going to finance 25 cents of foreign content. Therefore, if the foreign content is greater than 25% of the Korean content, then that remainder of foreign content is simply not financeable and is out of the equation altogether at this point. The next step that we follow when calculating eligibility for Korea Exim Bank is we have to calculate how much local content will Korea Exim Bank finance. And the answer to that is up to 30% of the total Korean and total foreign content in the supply contract. So up to 30% of that value is going to be financeable by Korea Exim Bank. The final step in ascertaining the Korean Exim Bank eligibility for this supply contract is that Korea Exim Bank will finance 85% of the eligible Korea and foreign content. The eligible Korean and foreign content is 100% of the Korean content, and then that up to 25% of the Korean content that is foreign content. And then the sum of this and the local content is the eligible amount financeable by the ECA. So when you go through these calculations, and we're going to go through a few case studies, and you're going to do some exercises as well during the class. When we go through this study, you will see that even for ECAs that are flexible, like Korea Exim Bank, like UK Export Finance, like BPI France, and so forth, the down payment, that is the amount of equity required from the borrower in order to finance the deal, may actually be, and in many cases is greater than the proverbial 15% that we all hear about.